Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Dish. Woo! We're gonna get started. If you guys want to make your way into your seats, feel free to keep staying at the bar if you want to grab a drink. My name is Corey Grenier. I work at 7 Days. Has anyone been out for Vermont Restaurant Week yet? Awesome. If you haven't been out yet, you still have until this Sunday to try over 115 restaurants that are participating. ArtsRiot is a location that's participating. They have a Happy Meal, and the Happy Meal has a very special edition this evening. There's a CBD aioli with the Elmore Mountain Therapeutics CBD oil in it, so you gotta check that out. I would also like to thank all of our amazing Restaurant Week sponsors. Vermont Restaurant Week is presented by Vermont Federal Credit Union with support from City Market, the Essex, Vermont Creamery, Shacksbury's Cider, Switchback Brewing Company, Swish White River, Whistle Pig Whiskey, and media support from the Vermont Department of Tourism, Front Porch Forum, The Point, and WCAX. Can we give them a round of applause? Vermont Restaurant Week is also a benefit for the Vermont Food Bank, which is an amazing organization that is here tonight. Make sure you go say hello. We asked for a donation at the door, so thank you guys for those of you who did donate for helping Vermonters in need. We also have a few other, one more event this week. On Sunday at the Essex, we have the Brunch Bash, which is a decadent tasting event with 9 restaurants offering bite samples. We also have Shacksbury, Switchback, and Whistle Pig will be sponsoring their, sampling their alcohol. The High Rakes will be playing. It will be a great fun time. And we are offering a special promo to anyone who is here that wants to attend the brunch event. If you go to VermontRestaurantWeek.com and use the promo code HEMP, you can get $5 off your ticket within the next 24 hours. So check it out. Also, for those of you who haven't been to the bar yet, we have some awesome drinks from our sponsors, as well as some special cocktails this evening. Again, made with Elmore Mountain Therapeutics CBD. Try it out. And I would also like to introduce Abby Portman from the Intervale and May Quilty from City Market to come on up and just say a little something about the Dish series, which happens more than once, 3 times each year. Perfect.
I'm May Quilty from City Market. Like Corey said, the Dish is an event that happens 3 times per year. This is actually Dish number 13, which we're very excited about, Special Restaurant Week edition. We're also really excited to have some of our vendors from City Market here on the panel, so you can find both Loose Farm products and Elmore Mountain Therapeutic products in both of our stores. One other thing I will say is that we have a special 20% off coupon for anyone dining at ArtsRiot this evening after the event. It lasts through next Thursday, so it's a great way to capitalize on Restaurant Week, but also keep it going for a little bit longer. So thank everyone for coming this evening. I'll let Abby share a little bit more about the series. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for coming. So the Dish is a culinary discussion or agricultural discussion. It's an exploration for consumers and for the community. And we do 3 a year. And so this is our April Dish, and our next one will be in November. The date will be announced hopefully soon. And also, we hope to see you guys all at Somerville this year, which is every Thursday in July and August. Thank you, guys.
So without further ado, I will pass the mic to Sasha Goldstein, Deputy News Editor at 7 Days. He'll be moderating the discussion this evening, and he will take it from here. Thank you.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks again to all our sponsors and also ArtsRiot, of course, for hosting us tonight. Before we get to our great panelists, thank them as well for coming. I wanted to give us a little background on hemp, and I'll try not to put you all to sleep, but and before I get there, I wanted to give a little disclaimer. No one up here is a doctor, so Anything we say about CBD is not Food and Drug Administration approved, so any claims are anecdotal. So, as you may know, hemp is an extremely versatile crop that can be used for clothes, food, fuel, rope, and building materials, among other things. It's a cousin of marijuana and looks and smells very similar. Hemp's scientific name is Cannabis sativa, and marijuana is Cannabis sativa indica. And while Vermont will legalize recreational marijuana on July 1st, and I know it's on many people's minds, we tonight are going to stick to discussing CBD and hemp. The major difference between the two plants is that the concentration of THC, the main psychoactive compound found in marijuana, is really low in hemp, about 0.3%. And so hemp will not get you stoned, so don't try it. Hemp is high in cannabidiol, which, as we know, has become all the rage in Vermont and across the country for its various reported anti-anxiety and anti-inflammatory properties. By one estimate I recently read, the CBD industry has doubled in size over the last 2 years and is now worth about $200 million. The hemp industry, meanwhile, is estimated to be worth $1.8 billion by 2020. And so how did we get there? Hemp had been illegal for about the last 80 years, though in 2013, Vermont legalized industrial hemp farming, and the next year, the federal farm bill allowed for universities and state departments of agriculture to grow industrial hemp as pilot research programs. And about 35 states currently allow the cultivation of hemp for commercial, research, or pilot programs. Getting federal approval does take some serious paperwork and jumping through hoops, as Abba, I think, knows. In Vermont, only 2 entities have this approval, and that would be UVM Extension being one, and Joel Bedard, he runs the Vermont Hemp Company, which is a research and development outfit, and they are also federally permitted to grow, process, and ship hemp products across state lines. The federal program also allows these 2 entities to import hemp seeds, and for other growers, importing seeds is actually technically illegal, but many do get them from out of state, purchase them online, or use hemp plant clones. And the state of Vermont does not provide seeds either. Instead, those interested in growing pay $25 to register. And I'll give you some numbers to sort of show how much the industry has grown in the last few years. In 2013, the year hemp was legalized in Vermont, eight people registered. That number jumped to 29 in 2016 and to 96 last year. And as of April 20th of this year, 180 people had registered to grow 1,341 acres of hemp in Vermont. So pretty incredible growth. Most of it fueled by demand for CBD-infused products. Last couple things I wanted to mention. There are a few things on the horizon that are relevant to hemp on both the state and federal levels. There's actually a bill right now in the Vermont House, and that is S-276, and that would impose some hemp testing and regulations looking for THC content and pesticides, and there's currently no testing from the state on either of those things at this point. It also would allow all state hemp registrants to become federally compliant as research pilot programs under the state's umbrella, so that's a pretty big deal for everyone registered with the state. Federally, Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky recently introduced the Hemp Farming Act of 2018, and that would actually legalize hemp as an agricultural commodity and remove it from the list of controlled substances on which it has been since 1970. So these are some very interesting things coming down the pike. So without further ado, I want to get to our panelists. So I want to go down the line here, starting with Abba, and introduce yourself, sort of say who you are and why you're on this panel, and give a little background about yourself and your company.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming out. So my name is Abba and I work with UVM Extension. I do agricultural research and outreach, and Extension as a whole, it's a section of the university that its main goal is to serve the public, and I'm part of the agriculture section of that. So our team studies a lot of different crops. We've got over 70 different research trials, and my specialty has been hemp has been one of my specialties. So since we started doing hemp research about 2 years ago, I've been a part of that. In the first year, we grew hemp for grain, being the seed, for fiber, or rather, the first year was just for grain, and then the second year was for grain, fiber, and for CBD. So there's a lot that we've been studying and looking at, and we make all of our research results available to the public, and that's what we want to do, is try and spread this information, so we're taking out some of the guesswork and the risk that farmers would otherwise have to take on for themselves.
My name is Noah Fishman. I'm one of the co-owners at Zen Barn. We're a restaurant, bar, event space, music venue, and wellness studio just north of Ben & Jerry's and Waterbury Center. My background was not the traditional restaurant tour, but really focused on community development, building sustainable communities, from local food and agriculture to environmental activism, internationally and here in Vermont. And that thread has stayed with me jumping into this new venture, and I think that's where a lot of my interest in the whole paradigm shift with hemp and cannabis in Vermont, and the opportunities to really use that to promote health and wellness in ourselves and our communities, as well as in the soil, and preserving our working landscape and farms, and building a more sustainable economy in the state of Vermont, and really across the country and world as well. So yeah, we've been experimenting with CBD in our restaurant, in our bar, and doing events, like last week's big 420 event where we had music and dance and celebration and public education as well around CBD. So it's something that we're pretty excited about.
Hi everyone. Thanks again for coming out tonight. My name is Ashley Reynolds. I own Elmer Mountain Therapeutics. We're a whole hemp plant CBD extract company. What segued me into CBD was after the birth of my second child, I started to suffer some pretty severe anxiety. And I was lucky enough at the time, I was practicing dentistry, which I had been doing for 15 years, and I had a patient who had anxiety and wasn't taking any pharmaceuticals. And I said, what are you doing? And so he, at the time, was splitting his time between Oregon and Vermont, and told me about CBD, which a year ago, or a little over a year ago, I had never heard of. And maybe you guys felt the same way, that it just kind of got sprung on Vermont. And so I did some research, as many medical professionals do, vetted a couple companies, looked at test results and testimonials, and decided to order a company on a whim. And within a few days, and I'm talking, my anxiety was like no appetite, couldn't sleep, was just not able to be a functioning mother. And within a few days of taking CBD, I felt like I was back to my old self again, and in the driver's seat. And as a young mother of two, I knew a lot of other mothers and a lot of other women, and I just felt like I couldn't keep this a secret. So I, after about 2 months of taking it, went to my husband and I said, I want to start a CBD company, and I want to really work on not only marketing with women and educating women and mothers, but also trying to create as many partnerships with Vermont-based women-owned companies. There's a lot of really great ones out there, ones that have been in business for over 10 years, or close to 10 years, Nutty Steps being one of them. They put our CBD into their chocolate, which I have to say they were you know, it was reluctant at the time because nobody knew what CBD was. So it was just starting to be sort of a low rumble back over just a summer ago. And so now we have grown to over, and this is a year for our company will be on May 5th. We have grown to over 50 retail locations in less than a year. So if you can imagine, if any of you realize that kind of growth, that like you're basically building and sailing a ship at the same time, which comes with a lot of steep learning curves. But it's been a really wonderful ride, and I'm so blessed to have such wonderful partnerships that help mentor me as a new business owner, as a teeny business owner, as a woman business owner. It's been a really cool network of women to work with and feel like we're all in this together. So, yeah.
Thanks everybody. I'm Chris Condon. I'm a co-owner of Loose Farm, old family farm from Stockbridge, Vermont. We're not actually part of the Loose family. We get that question a lot, but the energy around this beautiful 1800s farm in the hills of Vermont, you know, is just so incredible that we didn't want to change a thing. So we kept the name. Becca and Joe, my partners, have been farming for about 15 years now. We met 3 years ago, 2015, saw this farm and just knew that we had to do something with it. We wanted to bring it back to life. We knew that cannabis could help play a role in that. We had no idea how. At the time, we also had no idea what CBD was. But we knew that there was something special about this farm, and we really felt passionate about it. So we went for it. That was, again, back in 2015. It was our first year growing hemp. We found another group to kind of partner with and do a little R&D and see how these strains grew in Vermont. We're firm believers in growing and doing everything organically and as natural as possible. So soil and sunshine, natural spring water was kind of the theme behind everything we do, and really just food as medicine. And so our farm is still a fully diverse farm. We have goats and chickens. We grow other produce, other medicinal herbs, and want to continue to expand. Hopefully one day we'll have a sugaring operation. And hemp and CBD has really helped us to get along. For those growers and farmers out there, they all know it's a difficult business. And so for us, we started growing. We had this incredible product. We were looking originally to stay just in the farming kind of wholesale side. We couldn't find anybody to sell it to, so we figured, why don't we make our own products? We had a neighbor who found out what we were doing. She suffered from muscular dystrophy, and the medication that she was on sort of wiped her out. She lived a very active Vermont lifestyle, hiking, biking, and she couldn't do those things on this medication. She came over and asked if we could do something for her, make something for her. And absolutely. So in the kitchen, we cooked up a few things, and now all of a sudden she was able to take her dogs for 2-mile walks and go biking. And for those that know Stockbridge or the area, it's not flat. Not that much of Vermont is, but especially Stockbridge. And she was able to do that. And so that kind of got us thinking, maybe we're onto something. We started exploring CBD more and more. And so about 9 months ago, we came to market with our products. We have an infused raw honey, an infused coconut oil, and a topical balm. And yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's crazy. I don't have a small business background, so kind of diving in headfirst to that has been a challenge, and we learn as we go. But the support, not only in the state but our communities, is just incredible. And it's really an amazing plant, and we're so happy to be a part of the whole industry.
Great, thank you guys. Let's go to Noah here. I wanted to ask you, this is a very new industry, as everyone mentioned, and I think we heard a little bit from Ashley and Chris about their inspiration, but how about you guys? Where have you gotten your inspiration for Zen Barn and for some of the products you've produced in the last couple of years?
So a few different sources, and a lot kind of just naturally grew organically. One of the things that early on, we had a friend of ours who Dan Giangreco, who had a Vermont Cannabis Association, and a few other projects, was really trying to push education and bring the industry together. And he approached us early on in the business and wanted a place to just start a conversation with the community about cannabis. And so we started to do this Greener Drinks program. So through that, every Wednesday, which we still do, simply we set up a table, have often 2 or 3 vendors, and we just created a space where people could come in the industry, get to know each other, talk, come up with ideas. And I think that really spearheaded just the evolution of thinking and talking and getting to know what products are out there, and our bartenders seeing that, our kitchen seeing that, and then ideas percolating from there. Like, wow, you know what, we could do something in the kitchen with this. That's a great product that we could use in the bar. Let's try something. And we started to have fun with it. And it was a way for me to keep my staff engaged and having some stuff that they can get into. So it was in a way really great from the HR perspective to keep people, sometimes it gets routine in the kitchen. You throw in a new ingredient that they can have fun with. So we started to play around, and then I think all of these efforts for us as a business are like, how does it filter through like our mission, our vision for what we really want to achieve? And the more we looked into the potential of cannabis and the CBD, it hit on every element of what we wanted to do with the wellness studio upstairs and what it can do for people's anxiety and things like that, as well as supporting farmers and the working landscape and the soil to the soul idea that we really talk a lot about. And so it just kept working, and when we tried products, the response was really strong. When we did a CBD cocktail for the first time, it flew off the shelves. And when we did a hemp and hops dinner, a 5-course beer and CBD food pairing, sort of decadent dinner. We didn't know how it would go. We sold out 2 seatings, and sort of, it just was sort of unexpectedly in a way, just really took off quicker than we even thought it would, and we just have gone with it.
Chris, how about you guys with the honey? Why did you decide honey as a product?
Originally, it was the taste. We started off with just a coconut oil, and the flavor was a tough taste for some to take down. So we wanted to think of something that could sweeten it up a little, but also be part of somebody's everyday routine as it is. So whether you're using honey for coffee or tea or yogurt on granola, we just thought it was raw honey in general is just extremely nutritional and beneficial. It tasted great, it blended well, and so we just ran with it.
Good deal. Abba, I wanted to ask you about growing hemp. You guys have been doing it since, like you said, 2016. What can you tell us about growing the plant, and what advice would you have for someone interested in growing their own?
Advice. So anybody that grows anything in Vermont knows that the weather, the soil, can be a challenge. We had last spring was an extremely wet one, and so our plants stayed in the greenhouse a lot longer than we anticipated or really wanted them to. Really the education, what the UVM extension programs can do is such a big piece of it. It's complex and it's new and it's tough, and there's no, in my opinion, or not yet, experts. It's still a new program. So having that expert that you can rely on, there's a lot of information out there, which helps. But it's learning as you go and being able to adapt and work with the conditions. We grow everything organically. This will be the first year that we're testing out some clones. Before the past 2 years, we started everything from seed. We don't use feminized seed, so we start them under light, harden them in the greenhouse, and then sex them in the greenhouse before we move them to the field. So this is a great little R&D project for us to compare the plants that started from seeds versus the clones. And so it's a tough crop. Any farmer or grower will tell you it's not easy, especially harvest. It's not necessarily the grow either; it's the harvesting. harvesting everything from hand, trimming everything from for hand, you know, you need a lot of people, a lot of support, a lot of community help, and fortunately we've been able to get that.
Abba, do you want to tell us about some of the UVM extension programs?
Sure. So the things that we've been studying, the first year when we were just doing the grain was varieties, different planting dates, different seeding rates, and weed control experiments where we were trying out different row spacing. And then the second year for the row crops being grain and fiber, we were doing varieties and planting dates. And then with the CBD, it wasn't technically an experiment and we couldn't run statistics on it, but just like getting to know CBD, we grew undercover under a plastic caterpillar, and then outdoor just being in black plastic mulch. Some from cuttings, clonally propagated, some that were seedlings. And from all of these experiences, some of the lessons have been, when hemp starts out, when we're talking in a row crop setting, where the plants are very closely spaced together, the rows are about 7.5-inch spacing. In Canada, they often use 15-inch rows, and this is a mechanical system. So you're using a seed drill to put in the seed, and then later using a combine to harvest. And so in that setting, at first when the plants are growing, they look really weak and piddly. And during 2016, this was after we had done like 1.5 years of paper pushing to be able to get the seed, we were getting really concerned that we were going to lose the crop to weeds. And so we tried cultivating, and the crop doesn't really handle cultivation well. A lot of the plants are getting torn up by the roots. And so on those sections where we didn't cultivate, even where we did, after another couple weeks or so, once the plant reaches about 10-12 inches in height, it goes through this big growth spurt and really takes off, outcompetes the weeds. So under those conditions, 2016 being like a very warm, dry spring, hemp was able to outcompete, whereas this last year, you know, weather being having such a huge impact, of course, we had a lot of seed rot early in the season, and we didn't have the heat and the warmth to really promote that growth spurt, and so we had a lot of weed competition, poorer stands compared to the year before. And then from a planting date standpoint, all of the hemp matured regardless of when we planted it, and our plantings spanned about a month of time at weekly increments. We had 4 different plantings. That's how we did it in 2016 and in 2017, from mid-May till mid-June. All of the hemp stands in that planting date trial matured because hemp is a photoperiod sensitive crop. So after June 21, once day length starts to decrease, the plant switches over to producing its reproductive parts. So everything will mature and get seed off of it. And it seemed like in 2016, the first planting date had the greatest yield, but also that was a big learning about how to best harvest. And so how to modify the combine to be able to harvest this grain crop without the long fibers getting caught up in these different reels in the combine, having to plug up the combine a lot, stopping, starting, and then in that process, losing a lot of the harvest. And then it was kind of different in 2017 because the spring was so cool and wet. It seemed like the later planting dates actually performed better and had greater yields than the earlier planting dates, and that maybe was just because it was cooler and wet and then it warmed up. So yeah, definitely the harvesting piece was another big lesson. Making sure to get in and harvest early when the plants are still green, whereas with most other grain crops, you wait until the wheat is totally dry, and then that's when you go in and harvest. But hemp is not, that's not the case, because you don't want the fibers to get so mature that then they'll cause a lot of problems on the combine. And then at least this is a little bit more anecdotal because our CBD research was a very simple design. It seemed like the plants were being grown undercover. Well, it proved in the numbers too, but what was grown undercover had greater yields, and definitely starting from clonal plants seemed to perform better than those that were started from seedlings. But yeah, our research on that was still pretty preliminary. So.
Would you say it's easy?
I don't know. I mean, it can be. I mean, we still got good yields in 2017, even with the tough growing conditions. I think that hemp can do well here. I don't have enough experience, only with 2 seasons to really say, and especially with each of those seasons being so different. But 2016, our yields were great. And they're small plots, so it's a different kind of scale, but the yields were really good, and there aren't a lot of pest or disease issues that we've seen so far. There's a little bit of sclerotinia, white mold, there's some aphids, but they seem to affect the plant later in its maturity after it's already done all of its vegetative growth, so it's not really gonna cause much of a yield impact. And likewise with the Japanese beetles, when they're kind of like, when they're more present there, it didn't seem like they had much impact either. So from a pest disease standpoint, it didn't seem like there's that much problems. And like a weed management standpoint, I guess that's really just like seasonally dependent.
Great. Ashley, I wanted to ask you, start with you on this. You mentioned, when you and I talked, you mentioned trying to source all of your CBD from Vermont producers. Why is that so important to the hemp market in Vermont, and why is that so important to you as a business person?
That's a great question. So the sort of the history of EMT, because it's so long, is that we were sourcing our products, or sourcing our hemp and doing our processing in Colorado. A lot of that had to do with wanting to start a company where we could verify and test consistently of a product. And so fast forward, and also as native Vermonters, which both my husband and I are, it was always our intention to want to switch to a Vermont CBD product. And last year, we visited a ton of farms. We learned a ton about cultivation, about mold, and sort of, late season start. So there were a lot of really awesome, Christmas tree looking hemp plants, and there were a lot of that were teeny tiny hemp plants. So we really got to see the gamut based on strain, region, and how, pretty much how experienced the cultivator was as well. So also we really understand the quality of Vermont, and I mean, I don't know how many native Vermonters there are in the room, but I feel like Vermont always does it better. And so as we started to look at other plants and be able to raise enough money to transition to Vermont-based product, at the end of last year, we were also met with overwhelming amounts of calls of farmers that were looking to sell raw product. So rather than sort of doing seed to shelf, which we were kind of still trying to figure out sort of what we wanted to do, if we wanted to be, grow vertically integrate like right from the get-go, or if we could be able to source all of that. And we saw that there were a lot of people that were growing, but that didn't really realize how difficult it is to build a brand and get a product on the shelf. I don't know if you guys have kind of seen the trends that, there's many retailers in Vermont that you can go and there's like 15 different options, some from out of state and some not. And I think that it showed, the folks that were able to vertically integrate, awesome. But the folks that were cultivating and sort of needed that bridge to getting that crop to be worth something, I think was kind of where we came into play, with being able to now be 100% from Vermont as far as all of our hemp and processing. It's been something where we've tried to plan for what we think is going to be the demand, but it seems like every week, and I don't know if you're finding this as well, Chris, but that like every week it's just growing more and more and more, and the demand, I mean, I keep saying like, oh, the boom hasn't even really happened yet, and I still really believe that, but I think it's really coming, and I think trying to set the standard for sourcing from Vermont, looking from within, all of these farmers are here. There's a tremendous amount of talent that is already here. So I think it's now just kind of a matter of figuring out who's going to supply to who to keep up with this ginormous demand. And I'm not saying that there's no room for more companies to sprout up by any way, shape, or form. But I think that it is really difficult, and as time goes on and regulations start to seep into the industry, it's going to be getting harder and harder and harder to keep up. And not only that, I mean, Vermont's trying to keep, you know, out-of-state products from coming in, seed and sourcing, but the laws can't keep up, I think, with how dynamic the industry is moving. So it's really up to the business owners of these CBD and hemp companies to be ethical on their own merits and make the right decisions for their own companies, but also the right decisions for the state. And I think that sourcing from Vermont is where it starts. And I think that we all know that there's a tremendous amount of quality here. But this industry is moving so quickly that it's this weird juxtaposition to know there's this demand, but really try to not hold it back because it's impossible. It's growing without any of us ever knowing that it was going to grow this fast. I mean, I can say, just speak for myself, like where we are as a company, I thought that was like 5 years from now. So trying to kind of handle the demand, be public, do advertising and, you know, do these cannabis weeks and kind of show your brands and show off your brands. But it's also kind of nerve-wracking because, you know, then 2 weeks from now you're met with like hundreds of thousands of orders that you're like, well, geez, like how do we make this all work so that the company operates how it operated today and then continues to operate that in 2 weeks? So it's really quite tricky to try to figure out the sourcing aspect. I'm so encouraged to hear that so many acres are projected to be grown this year. That sounds amazing, and I encourage people to keep trying, keep learning, keep getting into it. I think that there's a misconception also that like people have missed the boat when it comes to getting into the industry, that like if you haven't been growing for the last 2 years or 3 years, then like you can't possibly get into the game. But everybody's learning. Everybody, I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's some people out there that are like dead set on their genetics and they're just gonna keep on running that. But you can't predict the weather. What's gonna be great for this year for genetics might not be great for next year for genetics. So it's really cool to see this sort of seed sharing, genetic sharing, breeding going on, these hybrids that are all gonna be really super conducive to Vermont. Because we know this is kind of a weird climate to grow in. Like you said, you know, some years are great, some years are not so great. So how do we keep up with the demand, but also we're at the mercy of the weather because it's mostly grown outdoors. So yeah, kind of going down the rabbit hole. But yeah, sourcing from Vermont is definitely key. We're really hoping, just to kind of get down this route, we're really hoping that with the fact that we use organic hemp seed oil as our carrier oil, that we're hoping to source the entire product from Vermont in the next year or two. It's tough to do with other oils that there are in the market, but hemp seed is just such an awesome lipid. It's such a great omega to begin with that I'm excited to see if anybody out there is going to start growing seed-specific crops instead of just CBD-specific crops, because carrier oils are just as important in a lot of ways as the actual CBD product.
Noah, I wanted to ask you about that boom Ashley was referring to. You're seeing customers, you know, every night at the restaurant. You're hearing from them. What do you think's driving this interest and boom? Is it curiosity? I mean, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly, but we certainly hear a lot of curiosity from folks of all types. There's people that are looking, you know, they have like chronic pain issues and they've been on medications, high-dose Tylenols and stuff like that, and they've heard that perhaps this is a solution for them. And they may not feel comfortable going to their doctor to talk about that. So we've had people coming into our restaurant and sort of ironically they're coming to like a bar to get medical advice, but there's not a real space where a lot of folks are able to really access information. So people are coming in, getting exposed to like, what is CBD? Is it something that will get me high? Like basic questions, and we'll just say, no, it doesn't get you high. You can give it a try, and they try it, and they may or may not feel something, but it gives them enough information that they may decide to go to City Market and get a product they may try at home or something like that. So I think we've been sort of on that, customer-facing side of like interacting with people, talking a lot about it. All our servers and our bartenders are trained up in it now, so that they're able to explain the basics of what is CBD. And I think that's been a way that we've also grown our audience and people that are trying it that haven't. A lot of what I hear is people that were like, well, I haven't smoked marijuana for 30 years, or I don't smoke marijuana, so I'm nervous about trying it. And then we get them to open up and try it, and then they're like, oh, yeah, this is actually quite nice. And yeah, it's been growing and growing. The sales of the stuff that we have with CBD has been really steadily growing, and it does seem to be sort of taking off in a pretty strong way, sales-wise.
And it helps you have a product called a gin and chronic, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, a little bit of marketing and having fun with it. I think the garnish, people love. Like, there's also the thing of like, it's been prohibited for so many years, and when you introduce something that's been not allowed for so many years, everyone wants to try it. So there's a certain amount of that. I think people have been waiting to just have a place like a cocktail with a leaf, cannabis leaf in it. I mean, it's a novelty, and people really love it. It's fun. Aside from all the medicinal stuff, I think it's a fun drink, it's a fun product. The taste, some people it's like reminiscent for some people, or some people it's totally new, and we've done different profiles of the taste with our food and drink and tried to minimize it in some places and have some things where we put a little more of that hemp flavor in there, and not everyone loves it, but we've been sort of experimenting and seeing what people really like and what they don't like, and yeah, it's still very new, so we're feeling it out.
Along those lines, I wanted to come to you, Chris. I wanted to ask about creating a CBD infused product, and how do you decide how much CBD to use in like a jar of honey, and do you also incorporate the taste of CBD into that product?
Yeah, so great question. One of the biggest things that we wanted to focus on was transparency. And because it's a new product for a lot of people, we wanted them to be able to essentially see every step of the way, which is one of the reasons we started growing. We can show them a picture of the farm. They can come by the farm and check it out. After harvest, the big question was, okay, now how are we going to extract the CBD from the plant, from the bud, the flower? We started just using coconut oil. Just in the kitchen, trying to make these products, and we'd make some, we'd go get that tested, we'd do another batch, we'd go get that tested, and it was tough to find, it was tough to get consistency. Every plant was different, so every batch was different, so then trying to make a product where I can confidently say, yes, there's 360 milligrams of CBD, full spectrum oil in this honey, was difficult to do. So we decided to go, it's a much costlier route, but we use supercritical CO2 as our extraction method. So we get a full spectrum CBD oil. We don't refine it any further down after that, and we use organic coconut oil to then dilute that concentrate down to ensure that the THC is below the 0.3%. And so that's really the foundation of all of our products, is that extract. And then it's testing. We test it on ourselves, our friends, our families. We're at farmers markets. We do tastings. We look for feedback from folks on the dosages, how much they're taking, how they're taking it, the time of day that they're taking it, and really, kind of just experiment with that and try to find a sweet spot where we can get, people that want a higher dose. We'll have a different product for somebody that wants a lower dose, and similar to the honey. So they can take a half a teaspoon, get a 5 milligram dose, and maybe they're taking it just before bed to get a good night's sleep. So yeah, it's really a lot of talking to our customers, asking our customers what they want, what works best for them, taking that back to the kitchen, and seeing what we can put together.
Ashley, is that same for you as well, or?
Yeah. I mean, we started kind of monkeying around with getting to approach some of these edible companies that we work with 90 Steps and Laughing Moon. Is that like I didn't know anything about formulating. I just knew that I wanted to put it into a chocolate because ladies love chocolate, I love chocolate. I like the medicinal benefits that go with chocolate as well as like integrating CBD into a lifestyle, that it can just be like part of your nighttime routine of a dessert versus like taking a medicine. It just is 2 in 1. So I went right to the experts. I put the magic of CBD into the beautiful formulations that they have perfected over years and years. Then the same thing kind of happened with working with some restaurants in and around Vermont, like Pauline's restaurant right on Shelburne Road is now putting it into a vegan pot de creme, which is a really cool way to add it. That's also an environment where I think that CBD is like, we're kind of living in 2 worlds right now. We're moving towards legalization, but then also there's this really kind of more just say no, still lingering around the idea of cannabis and about cannabis as a medicine. So for what we've seen, and that is integrating it into a lifestyle has not only helped sort of normalize, but it's also helped people to see that like it doesn't have to just be, something that tastes really floral and really herbal. Some people really like that. I love what you touched on, Noah, about bringing people back to a memory, maybe if it was 20 or 30 years ago, or maybe they've never tried that taste or tasted that sort of herbal taste we all know and love that comes with cannabis and hemp. But it's been a really kind of cool thing to see that now it's like on a lot of menus, not just for Cannabis Week. Like it's really starting to get everywhere. And so the idea of sort of cannabis as a medicine is really becoming so much more widely accepted. People using it in their everyday is so much more widely expected and accepted. And so that part is really exciting for me, is that trying to get it out of the shadows, get it out of like looking at it as like a party scene or a thing that you don't tell your friends that you do, or the mother play group that you're in that you do. Like it's really nice to see, and the food has been an awesome segue to that.
And like you said, it's sort of been everywhere now. I think you're seeing it in a lot of places, and that sort of leads me to my next big question of the night, I think. And that is, in Vermont, first came maple syrup and milk, cheese and beer. Can hemp and CBD be the Vermont's next big thing? Abba, what do you think?
I think that there's definitely a lot of potential for hemp, and that potential is like one of the biggest reasons why we started doing research, is that this crop could add, it could diversify farms and add more resiliency to the agricultural landscape. And so we're really excited about that. And some of the things that I think would need to change before, especially from the row crop side of things, that those crops could really take off, is that from a grain standpoint, there's an oil processing facility that's being run by this company called Victory Hemp Foods in Middlebury. And so that's a really good start. There's like a place where this raw product can go and then get processed and put into products. And then from a fiber stand, and that like is still up and coming. So that's really good. But then from the fiber standpoint, there's, I think, like a handful of fiber processing facilities, maybe less than that are starting to pop up within the country, but that's where we're even more behind. And so until those facilities come in and those processors, then even if we produce it here, it's going to kind of bottleneck the product. Maybe there are processing facilities that growers could make arrangements with, and I haven't done as much work on the like, once you're done with this good, once it's come off of the field, then what? So I'm not as familiar with the marketing and processing side of things. And then as for CBD, I'll leave that to these guys.
I guess personally, I would resist the idea that there's the next big thing, and that I think there's huge potential with this crop, and as the paradigm shifts and regulations hopefully start to lessen, and there'll certainly be opportunities. There's a lot of pent-up demand for this. At the same time, we need to think about overall sustainability and diversification and resilient practices to ensure that we don't go too far down the pathway of thinking this is going to save our farms, thinking this is going to save our economy and create all these jobs, and find that all of a sudden the bottom falls out of that, and then what next? And I feel like we've been through these cycles before, and it's important that we do this consciously and we do it right. And Vermont has a lot of potential to go that route and maybe learn from what's happened out west a little bit, and really preserve what we're really known for, which is the experience of people coming to Vermont, for one, and the tourism, and and the high quality that we're really about. If we can preserve that in this new industry and keep diversified, not get rid of the maple syrup, not lose the focus on the other great things we do in the state, keep our farmland beautiful, keep our institutions alive and our communities strong. I think that's what people want to come and see here. Is a very, and I think going too far into the whole cannabis world has it, even for us as a business, it's a double-edged sword. So you can, people still aren't, not everyone who comes into our restaurant likes that we, or is comfortable with cannabis leaves everywhere and CBD, and I think we have to be, as much as we may want to get rid of that, it's not going to disappear overnight. And so I think we have to be careful of not going too far and meeting people where they are as well, and helping, not just like-minded people get more of the stuff, but bring in new people and give them a soft entry point, and have other things that we're about as well.
Sure. Ashley, what do you think?
No, I do agree with a lot of that. I think we can thank, Bernie Sanders for, in a positive light, shedding how forward-thinking Vermonters are, how we really treasure our quality and authenticity. And I think that, I've run into this in other states that that do allow where it's, a little looser when it comes to, having our products in other places besides Vermont, where they're only wanting to source their CBD products from Vermont. That the standard for Vermont as a whole is there. That I do see us competing. I don't know if you even want to say competing, but like having a national spotlight put on us as contenders in the cannabis industry and for the hemp CBD industry for now, because we do have these awesome quality products. What Loose Farm does and what a lot of the Vermont-based companies do, like Creek Valley, Cannabidiol, like solid dudes, solid growers, solid products, tested, organic, like we don't have to do any of that. And we're already choosing to go down that righteous path of being transparent. You want to come to our farm, come to our farm. You want to ask me what strain we grow, we'll tell you what strain we grow. You know what I mean? It's, for me, I see it where, we're so strong as a culture of Vermont people that I think we are going to fight for what is pure to Vermont. But the opportunity to grow business to a national scale, if we can do it, I don't really see why we wouldn't, because, Ben & Jerry's is so great, what we do for, for Alchemist, for all these other really prominent Vermont brands. I don't see why CBD, for any of the companies that are on the market now, for Vermont companies, like why they wouldn't be able to be at that level, for the quality that we have and really the expertise that we have.
What do you say, Chris?
Yeah, tough being on the end of the panel for a question like that. Everything, I completely agree with everything they said. Vermont has such a good reputation for quality, not just around, maple syrup and agriculture, but I see it similar to, the craft beer industry, in that, we're probably not going to be, the biggest supplier of CBD or of hemp to the country, but people are going to come to us when they want that quality product. When they want to know where it was grown, how it was extracted, how it was made, and who made it. Who are the people that are literally in the kitchen making these products? It's not just all big machines that are doing it on a mass scale. And, so I do see Vermont being able to grow and have that reputation of being one of, if not the best suppliers of CBD and of hemp products. And so best isn't always the largest. I think we have a lot of opportunity.
Sort of along those lines, do you guys feel supported by the state? Is there too much regulation, too little? Has the government provided, the assistance you need, and sort of what, if anything, is lacking? Maybe I'll start with you, Abba, because I know you guys had to go, you had to fill out a lot of paperwork, I think, to be federally approved to import seeds.
So people from the Agency of Agriculture were helpful when we were navigating that paperwork process and helping and trying to figure out that process. So that's been good. And that's like the largest way that we've worked with the agency so far. We've had some conversations about where hemp could go, but it for the most part has seemed like still like early on in programming, and so there's the registration program and there's the testing program, and that's kind of where it's at right now, it seems like. So.
I was saying, I mean, it's been nice that it's sort of self-regulated, right now. And for us, we like that because it lets us, gives us the flexibility to establish this business, but also, like I said, do it in a way that we don't necessarily need the regulation. So we test our plants to ensure that they're legal. Then we test our extract to ensure that that's legal. Then we test our products after we've made them to ensure that what's on the label is actually in the product. And so, it's been nice to, to do those things without having to be told to do them. So if we are told down the road, we're prepared.
And I think it comes from a safety point of view too. Like, I mean, I know we're not doctors and nothing that we're saying is FDA approved, but I mean, what Chris touched on earlier, I mean, you can't deny the testimonials. Like, you can't, like, having a war on drugs is a war on drugs, but like having a war on science, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And it really, it's hard because it leaves folks in the dark. It leaves physicians and healthcare providers in the dark. So, folks are using this stuff, they're dosing themselves, they're, monitoring themselves, and, for the most part, I certainly haven't heard any negative things, but I mean, it's hard for the average consumer to really know what is in their product. They know it's working, but why is it working? If the product doesn't have proper labeling, that puts people at a disadvantage for knowing how many milligrams they're ingesting. And I mean, there is risk, I guess, for, taking too much. But yeah, I mean, it is nice to self-regulate. It is really nice to see that as an industry, we're all really working as a community. There's not really like a sense of competition. I don't know. Do you feel the same way? Like, we're all kind of in it together. Yeah. Like, I have such an awesome memory of going down to Loose Farm, like right from the beginning, like over, I guess it was before harvest, so it was like September maybe. And, I had just met Joe and Rebecca kind of over the internet because we were like following each other, and like the people who were posting on social media about hemp, you're like, oh, let's be friends, because like nobody's doing that right now. And we went down there, and I remember just sitting in their kitchen, like the 4 of us or 5 of us, I guess it was, and just being like, can you believe this is happening? Like, we just couldn't, we couldn't believe it. And just what we had seen for our own testimonials, what we had all been using the product for, like, we couldn't believe it, what we were hearing. So yeah, I mean, for many reasons, it's kind of nice to kind of operate in this sort of gray area, getting to kind of test out, putting it in food, putting it, in alcohol, putting it in various products, topicals. It's been really fun. But no, I mean, I think for many reasons that the real work is going to start here really soon. For hopefully the sake of safety and of folks using this as a medicine, but also because I know it needs to, at some point it will be taxed and regulated. So that's just kind of an inevitable of any crop, any business.
So I'll go out on a limb to say I think the state can do a lot more. And I think that there's great people in all elements of the state that are really into this and doing great work from what I've seen. But I think I said before that I don't think we should view this as the next big thing and just go, gangbusters, that this is going to be our savior. Vermont does have a huge opportunity here, but every other state is also seeing that opportunity and doing a lot with this. And I think we're going at this slowly, and we can do a lot more to support farmers to get up to speed and really start cultivating and growing really high quality product, supporting reducing the cost of things like testing and getting entrepreneurs positioned so they can really make products and get them to market and keep them at a competitive, affordable price for consumers. And you know, I think there's a lot more that we can do as a state to really push this industry forward.
Yeah, along those lines, is it difficult to get testing and extraction done? I mean, have you guys run into that? Is it this backlog that Abba was talking about?
Financially difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What you said, although like there's definitely a bottleneck at processing for sure, which can make it tricky. I mean, you know, before you process, I mean, the plant has to be like bone dry, and waiting for that, and then waiting for processing. I mean, and then you're waiting for the processing so that you can get more product on the shelf to the consumer. I mean, it's expensive.
Have you guys found that too, Chris?
Yeah, it's expensive, and just the lack of supply in extraction and testing is an issue. So, you know, hopefully as the industry grows, and that's, you know, in what we've seen is the most expensive part of our process. But again, you know, it's really the only way for us to be completely transparent, and that's, you know, that's the route that we want to go. So we hope as the industry grows, it'll bring in more, you know, small business owners and extractors and testers and things like that. So hopefully it's, you know, one of those all ships rise scenarios.
Has that sort of been one of the more difficult parts of working with hemp and CBD in Vermont, or what would you guys say has been the most difficult part?
I remember the first time, I mean, I guess I was kind of naive because I went into the bank being like, okay, I'm going to get a business account and like it's all cool, and kids were in daycare, and I was like, all right, in and out. And I get a sheet of paper that's like, is the nature of your business cannabis related? Is the nature of your business there was two questions. One was about cannabis and one was about marijuana. And I was like shaking because I was like, I don't want to lie, but I also need a business account to be able to do electronic banking with any co-op that wants to buy the product. Like, you can't, I don't know about you guys, but like the days of like dealing in cash are like kind of over, and like it just kind of pigeonholes you, continues to put you in this realm of like a drug dealer. And so, you know, I was scared, and I mean, it was not an immediate yes when I wanted to get banking. I had to talk to the like branch manager and then the regional manager, and I was like on a first name basis with the regional manager of this particular banking entity. And at the end of the phone call, I was like, listen, you know, what's the chance, what's the percentage that you're gonna give me, you know, a business account? And he was like 50-50.
Wow.
And I mean, this was less than a year ago. And so, you know, I waited on pins and needles the next day, and he was like, we're gonna give you a shot, but like, basically like, don't tell your friends and don't mess it up. And it was like, okay. Still our bank. But like, I mean, that's the realm to be living in.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, people always ask us about online sales or electronic sales. And I mean, yeah, I mean, we're dealing with something that is certainly much more widely accepted. You're seeing it on retail shelves just about everywhere, but like, we're still dealing, you're calling it hemp, but people still see it as cannabis. They still see it as a Schedule I substance. And so for many reasons, for research reasons, for access reasons, for many, many reasons, it's really hard to still live in this realm and make a legitimate go of it and show people that you can do it, that you can get insurance, that you can get banking, you can get investment. Like, it's just one of those things that without being transparent, you know, like we all kind of touched on, like, to show others in the industry that you can do it, to bring in other industries. I mean, I think everyone's really watching to see what Vermont's going to do and how we're going to do it, and who's the players, and who's going to start making CBD ice cream, or who's, you know, I mean, and again, like, that's another thing that's met with huge opposition, because, I mean, then you're crossing lines where, like, you're working with the dairy industry. If you want to put it into milk, then the USDA and how that's backed by the federal government, doesn't really mesh well with something that's not federally regulated. So we're really still met with a lot of opposition, although in the state of Vermont, knock on wood, you know, I've never had somebody run up to me with a picket fence, you know, protesting me or telling me that I'm poisoning my child or, you know, that I'm a horrible mother because I use CBD every day. I have not had that, but for many reasons I think I haven't had that. In other rural areas and other like Latina and African American areas, I mean, that is a different story. So I do think that Vermont has supported us greatly, but it has not been a cakewalk, I think, for any of us. It's been hard pavement pounding, education every step of the way. I still get endless phone calls and emails, and I'm answering them. Consumers, maybe some of you have spoken to you on the phone, like, you have to be available and you have to educate people because their minds will go crazy and they'll believe whatever they see on TV about it being bad and what's going on in the federal government and how they're going to impose certain things to this industry. I mean, it's all sort of hearsay, but we're all still sitting ducks. Like, any moment, this could all just, if somebody wants to turn that light switch off. So, I mean, we're all just kind of trying to stay on but off the radar, do the right thing, test the right things, present the right things, and just kind of work in this realm of trying to be and do the right thing. But it's hard. It's really hard.
And I see both of you guys sort of nodding your heads. Have you guys had hang-ups along the way as well?
Yeah. From funding to credit card processors shutting you off literally that day and not being able to get any of the data or transactions or outstanding invoices. It's hard. The banking piece. Luckily, we have some credit unions that are willing to work with us. But yeah, it's difficult, and it is. I mean, it can be scary too. You're traveling with a bunch of vacuum sealed bags of flour up to an extraction facility, and you get pulled over and say, "No, you don't understand. No, it's hemp. It's not what you think." It's a little nerve-wracking at times. Like I said, we fortunately haven't had that issue. We've had many, even at farmers markets, law enforcement and ex-law enforcement come up and talk to us about it. And they get drug tested in certain ways, but they're still curious about it, whether it be for PTSD or anxiety or family or just everyday, aches and pains. It's more and more people are being open to it. And I tell the story. My wife's grandfather is 82, Vermonter through and through, still splits all his own wood. Reefer Baptist generation, disagreed with all of this. I'm pretty sure he wrote me out of the will at the time that we started. He tweaked his back splitting wood, and ibuprofen wasn't working. Nothing else was working, so I took a jar of our honey. He said, "Grampy, I'm going to put it in the cupboard, no pressure." And I feel like it was probably in the middle of the night. He went down and stuck a spoonful and went back up and went to bed. He's been using our honey every single day since October of last year. He says he sleeps better with it, fewer aches and pains, and his back, from that instant stopped hurting. So, the more we can destigmatize and normalize this plant and CBD, I think the more other industries will join us. Like crop insurance is a great example. Hailstorm comes through, we're done. That's it.
So we haven't, we're not solely focused on CBD, and haven't had a whole lot of challenges, but a few times along the way you realize how you are really pushing the envelope. A couple things that come to mind are, last year we did our first big 420 party, and we built this 15-foot tall cannabis leaf sculpture, and it was built by this great local artist, Chris Cleary from Jericho. He does these amazing burns, or it builds sculptures and it's loaded with fireworks and all that stuff, and fire dancing. Those are really beautiful artistic thing. Not everyone in town loved the idea of a cannabis leaf, sculpture in their town. And then so you get the sort of NIMBY kind of like, I don't know, they call them old school Vermonter. I mean, I was born in Vermont, so maybe I'm an old school Vermonter too, but there's folks out there that just don't like that stuff in their town. For us, with that one, by the time they were complaining about it, it was burned down, so it was a moot point. The other thing is we do a lot of our advertising through Facebook, and Facebook will shut down posts or advertising that have cannabis terminology, imagery in it. So a really kind of simple problem for us was that we had our Hemp and Hops dinner, our 420 party, all that kind of stuff. We're trying to get the word out through our main channel for events is Facebook, and they'll block boosted posts. They'll block it going to the people we're trying to reach. So you realize moments like that. Oh wow, yeah, this is there's going to be some resistance to this, institutionally, systemically, as well as like locally, and finding solutions around some of those ways when we want to do things in this industry is going to be a thing we need to talk about, I think, for some time to come.
Guys, this has really been great. We have to cut off now, and we're going to go to a couple questions from the audience.
You mentioned early in the beginning your grain harvest. Could you give us a sense of how much grain you got per acre that you thought was a great harvest?
I think that in the first year it was around 1,500 pounds an acre. And then the second year was like 1,000 or so.
So on that same thinking, so how many pounds does it take to get an ounce of extract?
That's a great question, and one that we used to ask all the time, and you can never get a straight answer. And for a couple good reasons. You don't know, it depends on the potency of the plant, so the strain and what percent is CBD. It depends on how long you can grow that plant for, because as the plant grows, the THC content also increases. So sometimes we have to harvest our plants. We start testing our plants in September. We have to harvest them early as soon as they start getting close to that 0.3% threshold. I guess to throw a number out there, and the other piece too is how dry the flower is. So when you're weighing it, what's the moisture content? So are 3 pounds getting you 1,000 grams of CBD, or is it 6 pounds because there's still moisture in it getting you that 1,000 grams? But I would 3 pounds of dried material can get about 1,000 grams of full spectrum CBD oil.
This one's for Ashley, Chris. You guys have any kind of rough estimate on from starting to where you're at now, how much you invested?
A lot. Yeah, financially, it's let's see, so started in 2015, but we're probably pushing upwards of $500,000. And that's in our own, so that doesn't include the other costs that go into extraction and things like that.
Do you want to answer that as well? So, I mean, truth be told, so instead of going on a honeymoon, we started this company, and so because it grew so fast, so we invested about $3,000, and then because it's moved quickly and how things have worked out with distribution production, I would say that was probably the most upfront cost that we had. But that was then. That was like growing it from this teeny tiny thing where no one knew about CBD to now. So we were able to grow with very, very little upfront cost.
Thank you.
Given that hemp's legal in Quebec, do we have any exchange with them in terms of processing equipment or seeds or any of that sort of thing?
I can speak a little bit to that. So most of the seed that we've gotten through our DEA permitting has been from Canada, and the legal way for us as university to access seed is to import it internationally. So it's primarily been coming from Canada, which had legalized hemp in 1998. They are way more further along with their hemp production, with grain primarily. And we've also gotten some seed from Italy and Poland. But I I haven't heard about the like processing exchange and sending materials internationally, but again, I haven't had as much experience with the post-harvest processing and marketing aspect.
No, I stay away from the federal border as much as possible.
Yeah.
How much hemp do you think is sitting around dried in warehouses right now?
Say that again?
How much hemp is sitting around dried in warehouses? I hear that there's a big glut of it sitting in warehouses waiting for the price to go up.
If you have any sources, let us know.
Yeah, I haven't heard that, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So you can lose the quality of the terpenes in the plant the longer it is between harvest and extraction. And given the number of 190 growers this year, I can only imagine that supply is going to continue to increase. So somebody sitting on it waiting, I haven't heard of that. I'm not sure.
Can you explain the spectrum of terpenes to the audience? That's kind of a gray area for people.
Yeah, so
Can you repeat the question?
yeah, the question was basically explaining what a full spectrum oil is versus a broad spectrum oil or a CBD isolate. Essentially a full spectrum oil is a crude oil. So you're not refining out other cannabinoids. So there are manufacturers that will extract the THC completely out of it. So at that point, you lose the full cannabinoid profile. So they are calling that a broad spectrum oil versus an isolate that's fully refined to, you can get upwards of 98, 99% pure, CBD cannabidiol. But again, then you're losing the other, 60, 70 plus cannabinoids that are in that plant. So the full spectrum oil being you're keeping the terpenes, you're keeping the nutrients, you're keeping that full cannabinoid profile.
Yeah, because what people don't realize is that when you go through processing, not every cannabinoid, not every terpene can stand up to heat and can stand up to pressure. So, when you have something at the end product after supercritical extraction, which both Chris and I's companies utilize, you're left with a product that looks kind of like room temperature honey. So then you take that, and that still has chlorophyll and plant wax in it. And then you take that and you put it back through the supercritical CO2 machine. You remove more of those terpenes and remove more of those plant waxes. Yeah, you're able to really sort of dial in purities when it comes to CBG or CBD, but you're also losing all the other potential sort of broad or full spectrum of the plant. And this is kind of like the age-old sort of disagreement. Like, do you want whole plant? Is that better than isolate? Is it different than isolate? It really just comes down to the science of it. And if you want something that's going to hit your endocannabinoid system in a more broad spectrum or full spectrum way, versus something where you're just trying to isolate this one compound that you think might be what's your endocannabinoid system is deficient in, it's really hard to tell. And also with isolate, it's really hard to dose it out. If you have seen isolate, it's powder, and so you're either weighing it or you're trying to make these teeny tiny little measurements to be able to dose out what the milligrams are. So in my opinion, I feel like having whole plant and full spectrum is a better way of utilizing the plant, because you're not degrading through processing, if it's either heat or pressure or otherwise, you're not degrading all the beautiful aspects of that cannabinoid profile.
We have time for one more. Get you over here.
I'm curious, friends and family always ask me this when I start talking about CBD. They say, so if they have an office that they test at the workplace, will CBD show up the same way THC does?
So no, CBD does. You want to take that?
Yeah, so I'd never obviously give a definitive yes or no, because we don't know how a company tests, if it's a blood test, a urine test, or their threshold, for that test. The facility we spoke with said that if they're testing for CBD, like they do THC, then yes, again, given the threshold, it would show up. if you have, say, a full spectrum CBD oil that's at 0.3%, standard urine test, we were told you'd have to consume about 1,000 milligrams of that full spectrum oil if the THC content was 0.3 a day on a consistent basis, given that threshold for it to show up on a positive THC test. But again, that's why we do the testing that we do. So rather than give a customer that answer, we'll have their HR group reach out to us. We'll provide them test results of the products, of our materials, and then let them, kind of make that decision.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight, and let's give a big round of applause to our panelists.